Hello, this is Jean Gutierrez, Program Director of the UTMB Galveston Combined Master of Science and Dietetic Internship Program. The purpose of this presentation is to just tell you a little bit about our program here. And I also created a separate presentation with separate tips for your application and interviews, etc. So even if you're not planning to apply here, check that out to just get a program director's perspective on those things. Okay, so we are the home of the oldest medical school in Texas. We are located on an island in the Gulf of Mexico, and so I guess back in the day we had the most comfortable weather in Texas, so they put the medical school here. We are part of the UT system. We're also an academic health science center, which is really helpful for getting all the resources, medical library, etc. We do have 4 schools, and the dietetics program is housed in the School of Health Professions, along with professions like physical therapy, occupational therapy, physician's assistant, etc. For those of you who aren't from Texas, this is Galveston Island. We are located about 50 minutes southeast of Houston, Texas. And the UTMB campus is located on the east end of Galveston Island. This is an aerial view of our campus. We are located on the harbor side. Here are some important buildings around campus. This is our brand new Jenny Seeley Hospital. This is our older hospital. John Seeley parts of it are being renovated, but we still have a medical burn unit. For any student who does Clinical 1 here, they'll be spending a good amount of time in these 2 hospitals. This is our medical library, which is a great resource for any student attending an internship at an academic health science center. You have access to all the major medical and nutrition journals. This is the School of Health Professions and School of Nursing building where our students have all of their coursework. Here's the Nutrition Metabolism Department faculty. So on the top, we have 4 faculty who are primarily scientists and researchers. So on the top left, that's our chair, Dr. Blake Rasmussen. Next to him is Doug Patton Jones. He does a lot of bed rest studies and protein metabolism studies. Next to him is Dr. Elizabeth Lyons. She does a lot of physical activity monitoring studies and activity studies in breast cancer survivors. Next to her is Dr. Chris Fry, and he does work in transgenic mouse models of aging, so lab more dedicated to bench science. On the bottom here, on the left, we have Professor Chris Messenger. He has been at UTMB for over a decade as a clinician, and he was the clinical nutrition manager. Now he's in our department as full-time teaching faculty, and that's me. On the bottom right, I am the program director of the MSDI at UTMB. This slide will just give you a little broad information about our program. We are 16 months long, and our students do take classes and rotate pretty continuously. There's a couple of built-in breaks in there. If you want more information on that, you can consult our student handbook, which is located on our website. So students start in the fall, they go take class fall, spring, and then do primarily rotations in the summer and the following fall and graduate in December. We took 18 interns in spring of 2017. I would imagine for spring of 2018 it's going to be pretty close to that. We might take 19 or 20. Our program is approved for 20, but we, so it'll be between 18 and 20 slots we'll have available. We don't have any undergraduate program in nutrition at our school, so we really do have all these slots open for the spring match. As I mentioned, the first 2 semesters are primarily coursework in the fall and spring. And then the spring also has 1 rotation part-time to kind of ease into it. The student decides which rotation they want to do, and students do their rotations in all different orders. The last 2 semesters in the summer and the final fall semester is primarily internship rotations, but there is one credit course in the last fall to prep for the RD exam and revise resumes, do cover letters, talk about reimbursement and things like that. Now I'm just going to go through each of the different kinds of rotations our students complete and talk about them. So the first one is Clinical 1 or acute care, which lasts 6 full-time weeks or 240 hours. Most students will rotate with UTMB dietitians in our main hospitals here on campus. That's our dietetic staff. But some of our students do rotate through an affiliated site, so I've listed those there. I tend to keep students closer to where they live. Some of our students are coming from the Houston area, so if that's the case, two of those hospitals are closer to Houston, so I try to assign those students to that hospital. I can't always do that, but I do consider geographic location when making the assessments. Clinical 2 are specialty rotations, and they vary in terms of how long they are depending on the site, but they're typically 3 weeks long. So our students will get to go to 2 different sites for 3 weeks apiece, or 120 hours apiece. And we have several UTMB clinics, so inborn errors of metabolism or pediatric cytogenetics is one of our options. And so students learn how to treat patients with conditions like PKU and galactosemia and things like that. We also have transplant here on campus with our dietitians at UTMB. We've been doing kidney transplants since the 60s at UTMB, so we have 2 dietitians who work full-time in transplant. We do have dietitians, 3 dietitians working in bariatric surgery and medical weight loss, so our students rotate through that clinic as well. We have both inpatient and home care renal rotations that our students can choose. We also have our own diabetes clinic on campus, pediatric special services, and also pediatric endocrinology and a NICU rotation here on campus. We have 3 different dietitians doing those services. We have Shriners Hospital for Children on campus here, so we have a dietitian who works full-time in that facility, and she does take interns, even though it's not technically a UTMB hospital, it is on our campus. And then many of our students rotate through DaVita dialysis as well, so there's a number of DaVita dialysis in the greater Houston, Galveston area. Some of our students go to Tier Memorial Hermann for their rotation, which is the #2 rehab hospital in the country. Some of our students, 2 or 3 a year, do have the opportunity to go to Texas Children's Hospital. Okay, now moving on to research rotations, which are 5 weeks or 200 hours full-time. This program does have a clinical and translational research emphasis. We're very strong in research, I feel, for such a fast MSDI program. We don't have a thesis option, but several students coming in, if they have a strong interest in research, I can get them connected to mentors right away, and they get many more hours beyond that 200 minimum by volunteering in their spare time. So we have had several students graduate and get papers, published manuscripts coming out of our program, and some of our students have gone on for doctoral degrees after finishing. We have several funded investigators in our department and in affiliated departments, but we also send students to Johnson Space Center. And typically I can get most students who want to go, if for example, if you're applying to UTMB to do that rotation, we can make that happen. So we also have on campus a clinical research center related to the bed rest studies and other studies, as I mentioned before, and there's a research dietitian who works there. We also have a postdoc, Dr. Deer, who developed a malnutrition study, and she's an awesome preceptor who works with our students. Dr. Lyons, who is faculty in our department, takes several students every year, and she's the one who does the physical activity gaming, physical activity monitors, and physical activity interventions with breast cancer survivors. She also has a postdoc who's a dietitian who works closely with our students. In the Fry Lab, he's a muscle physiologist, it's bench science, it's biochemistry, and he works on transgenic models of aging in mice and sarcopenia in mice. Does a lot of really interesting studies there. So that's a good lab where a lot of our students do a lot of extra time if they're interested in moving on to more science after our program. We also have, our chair has a really successful lab, and he just got a multi-million-dollar grant called the Motor Pack, which is a multi-site NIH grant called Molecular Transducers of Physical Activity Consortium. And this is just basically a big nationwide study to find the molecular targets that are activated with exercise and physical activity. So some of our students will be involved with that. This year, we've also started working with the UTMB Center for Addiction Research, and so they do some food addiction related work, and I've linked to the HAMA lab here. So here throughout, you'll see a bunch of links in the description box below. I'll include a link to a PowerPoint you can download so you can have access to all these links. Okay, moving on to community, which is 3 weeks or 120 hours. We do have our own WIC sites through UTMB, so some of our students choose that. We work with the Houston Food Bank. They have a few dietitians working there. They do a lot of education in schools and with the community. We work with the Galveston Food Bank, and our students, it's a very independent rotation. Students will develop materials for them. We work with the Galveston Farmers Market, where the market manager has really worked hard to coordinate things like SNAP benefits and additional WIC benefits with the farmers market. We work with Galveston and Harris County AgriLife Extension offices, and so this is a lot of like community engagement and programming. We also have associated with UTMB and Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and there are several Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes across the country, and these serve older adults age 50 and older and allow them to learn about various topics, and our site includes a lot of nutrition and activity classes. So students rotating here will develop course typically materials for those older adults. We also have 6 weeks of food service that all of our students do. All students do 3 weeks in a hospital and 3 weeks in a school. And so the hospitals we typically use, many of our students go through UTMB, kind of like acute care. Most of our students will do their hospital food service at UTMB. We also send students to Shriners and also to Bay Area Regional Medical Center this year. School, we have a number of local school districts you can see there that our students go to. Typically, students living on the island will go to either Galveston, Dickinson, or Clear Creek school districts. So we have also a 120-hour rotation dedicated to selective, and this is literally just the student picks something extra that they want to do. Many of our students choose to do a third clinical rotation with their selective. Some people do more research. Some people just kind of pick something a little bit random, and so a good example is H-E-B Grocery. It's our biggest grocery store in Texas, and they've really been innovative about including more dietitians in their grocery stores, and their dietitians do a number of things, a lot of community outreach classes, and they actually get physician referrals and see patients in the grocery store and help them shop and things like that. It's really cool. Centered for Discovery is a eating disorder clinic that we work with. We do have affiliations with a couple of long-term care contract companies that go to a number of different facilities. So if a student's interested in getting that experience, they can get that here. And then a student can also go back and literally any other rotation we offer, just get more experience in food service or whatever it is that they feel like doing. So just to talk a little bit more about the rotation setup process, I meet with students in the fall, try to figure out what they want to do, develop a draft schedule in the spring. We sit down, we talk about it. I try to include everything that they want to do. I can't always do that, but I do try to consider student preference and distance and all those things. So we do have a couple of meetings to kind of sort out where the student is going to go and make sure that they're getting the experiences they're hoping to get in the internship. Okay, now on to cost. So these tuition and fee estimates are for the entire program. That includes all the MS courses and the DI. There are no other, standalone thousands of dollars internship fees on top of this. So this is it for tuition and fees for the program. There are, of course, room and board and a number of, background checks, immunizations, things like that that are additional. We have detailed on our website. But for tuition and fees, it's about $14,500 for a Texas resident for the 4 semesters, or about $34,000 for a non-resident, which is still pretty competitive with similar programs. So Galveston is not an especially expensive place to live. If you need to live on your own, I think you're going to be paying about $800 a month for a 1-bedroom. Most of my students live together and cut down on living costs that way. We have a number of other smaller fees that will be the case in any other program too. Application fees, background check, fingerprinting, drug testing, etc. And those are detailed on our website, so you can check that out. You must have a reliable car for our internship because there will be driving involved. Even for our UTMB clinics, some of those are halfway to Houston, so students will need to be able to drive to those clinics. Our department does offer a couple of different scholarships. The most significant one is the Dean Scholarship, and this covers all tuition and fees for the first 3 semesters. This covers 3/4 of the total program tuition and fee cost. It is competitive and requires a minimum GPA of 3.5. It does require a strong GRE, and since our average GRE for the program is about the 50th percentile, usually the Dean Scholars have GREs higher than that. We also value research experience strongly, aligning with our emphasis area, so any research experience or papers will make an applicant a stronger uh, applicant for the Dean Scholarship. We do choose from our DICAS applicants, and we let that applicant know before the match date if he or she has won the Dean Scholarship. We do have several other smaller scholarships available from our department, about 5, that amount usually between $500 and $1,000. After match day, incoming students will receive a link to apply for these smaller scholarships. To apply to our program, you only need to complete the DICAS application. We only match in the spring, so we don't take any fall applications. In the past, we typically get between 55 and 65 applicants for 18 spots that we have. We don't have any undergraduate programs or other feeder programs or pre-select options, so all of those 18 spots are up for grabs. We typically interview 30 to 40 applicants on Skype. Last year we had 66 applicants in the first round. We interviewed 38 of those. We included 21 on our match list, and then we matched with 15 applicants on notification day. We then took an additional 3 in the second round. This is a pretty typical profile for us. We do weight our Skype interview and the DICAS application equally. So if you make it through to the Skype interview, there's a pretty good chance you'll end up on our match list. Since we have a clinical and translational research emphasis, we do value any research-related experience very heavily. We also like those traditional DTR experiences or any other nutrition-related experiences you've had with an RD. Work and volunteer experience are equally weighted. Our average DPD GPA is 3.65 generally. So having a GPA 3.5 or higher is going to be most competitive. The minimum GPA is a 3.0. Those with a 3.0 will have to have some other significant experience to be competitive for our program. They typically do not come straight out of undergrad with a 3.0 and then match here. Our GRE scores do average around the 50th percentile, so getting a 50th percentile across the board in all areas, all 3 areas, is good. Anything that exceeds that is even better. That said, we do also take applicants with lower GRE scores, so there's no minimum. A GRE score less than a 25th percentile will hurt your application, so if you're considering retaking the GRE if you weren't happy with the score you got, I would say, if all the categories are above the 25th percentile and maybe 2 or 3 are significantly above that, you wouldn't need to retake it for us. It wouldn't help your patient enough to make it worth it. In the past, this is how we've scored the DICAS. We could tweak it for this year, but we assign about 5% of our points to fluency in Spanish. We have a large Spanish-speaking population in South Texas, so we like that. It's not required, but it's good. The GRE score accounts for about 15% of the points. DPD GPA is 15% of the points also. We do not look at the overall GPA in our scoring process, so you won't be penalized for having a prior major where you took unrelated courses, or if you took some difficult science courses that weren't part of the DPD curriculum and got lower grades. That's not going to hurt your application here. We do look at the science GPA. It's about 5% of points. Related work experience is 15%. Personal statement is 15%. Letters of recommendation are 15%. And then we have this kind of more open subjective category to give people credit for things like Peace Corps, military experience, anything that kind of stands out in the application that's a little bit different, or just an overall strong application. The Skype interview does carry equal weight, as I mentioned before. So it's if you can, basically the DICAS we just use to make sure that we think you're academically qualified for our program and that you have some relevant prior experience. And then the Skype interview, we kind of get to know the applicant a little bit and make our decisions from there. So that's the end of this quick little video overviewing our program. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me via email or on the phone. If you have more individual questions that you want to ask or you want to talk to me a little bit, we can set up a little Skype meeting anytime in advance of the DICAS application so I can answer your questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.